All right now, hey everybody, welcome back for the second episode of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. And though I said welcome back, if you're catching this as your first episode, well, you know what? Thank you for tuning in. And with that being said, if you missed the first episode, please go back, check it out, take a listen, because that episode actually lays down the foundation of what the show, M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition is really about. So it's kind of, for me, the evolution of me within my talk realm, but also tying in so many of the things that I take value in regards to my career, helping individuals. As you know, I do work in mental health. I'm a crisis intervention specialist. I have a master's in community counseling. So I really have a background that prepares me to help people in so many different ways, not to mention my career path has put me in different arenas: education, social services, working in a hospital setting. So I really have worked with all types of people in different situations, and that wealth of experience really puts me in a position to share a lot of good things that I believe can be really helpful. So hence, I want to move past the M.A.Y.A show. Don't get me wrong, I like the name, but I wanted something more, but something that's still very M.A.Y.A, and hence the acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition. So make sure if you didn't have a chance to check out that first episode, you take it a listen, because it is the blueprint of what the show is. I'm a traditional talk format, so to speak, before I started doing this. But for me, everything's about salient topics that are fresh and forward thinking, from my perspective, and to have you process it and see what you can get from it. So what M.A.Y.A is all about in this case is it's pulling back that veil of self-doubt and often self-sabotage that plagues so many of us in our lives, to help you identify the ambitions that you have, and then how to harness your motivation to help you yield satisfaction and success in your daily lives, which is all about happiness. And the thing about it is, what that success looks like is totally up to you. It's got nothing to do with me. This is a journey we're taking together. So that first episode really talks about some key things from the perspective that the show will come from. So a quick recap on this for those people who didn't get a chance to listen to it, or if you maybe forgot. So I always tell people, grab your pen and paper and your beverage of your choice. For me, it happens to be coffee at this time. I drink coffee all the time, all day, love coffee. But if it's maybe, obviously a soda, if it's a cold beer, because that's where you're at, or a great glass of wine, hey, whatever it takes to help you to sit down and enjoy the show works for me. So that first episode, to recap it, like I said, we talked about relationship realms, and I discussed the personal, which is you, the relationship you have with yourself. And I tell people this is where you can also insert spirituality if that's something that's a big part of your life. If it's not, by the way, there's no shame in that. It's not for me to judge. This is your journey, your exploration of self. So you determine what's going to matter for you. Then there's that private relationship realm, the ones you have with family, very close friends, significant other, your children, things like that. Then there's that professional relationship realm, where you work, coworkers, bosses, how those relationships interact. And then there's one I personally created called the pervasive relationship realm. And that's that realm where they are more common interactions or relationships, but they still have maybe some purpose or value for you. So it might be a friend you have at work, but not someone you're super close to. It may be you have a circle of people you interact with that you wouldn't say they're your closest friends, but they're still people you value in some way, but just not the same as you do within those private relationships. So I call that pervasive common relationship realm. Now, the other part to that was, now remember too, you're going to find as you listen to me, I love alliteration. You're going to hear quite a bit in my discussion. So hence it was the 4 P's, personal, private, professional, and pervasive. So you'll get some alliteration in this episode too. Within those relationship realms, they're influencing factors: your emotional state, your mental state, your physical state, your financial state. Those states constantly exist in each one of those relationship realms and often impact how you choose to interact, make decisions, and so on and so forth. So we're going to have a lot of interchangeable things. In fact, most of the shows, matter of fact, on our next episode 3, we're going to focus a bit on the financial influencing factor and how that's impacted you in your relationship realms, especially when we're in this situation with COVID-19 and this being a pandemic. People have been affected in so many different ways. And I have a guest on to talk about that, to kind of give you some insight, to help you to be able to figure out how you can process this and how you can make through it, since we've already started another 30 days of stay-at-home orders, so self-quarantining with a little bit more laxed, letting people get out to do a few more things, but it still is challenging for people, often in those professional realms. They're being financially impacted, hence every realm you probably are in right now, except for maybe the pervasive, and even that is maybe impacted for some people, is clearly different than it was prior to COVID-19 happening. Or is it? That's something that we'll explore, even this episode a bit. So that's a recap. So if you didn't listen to episode 1, by listening to 2, it's not going to throw you off your square. You're all, I'm pretty sure, intelligent enough that this will also connect based on the recap I gave. But I would still like to encourage you to go back and listen and share if you think I say things that are salient. In fact, post comments for me, share things, because this show is actually driven from a comment someone threw at me after they listened to episode 1. So please share your thoughts, comments, as well as the podcast. So someone was listening, and by the way, you can listen via M.A.Y.A Presents, via my speaker page, but it's also now, you can find the podcast in the Apple and Google podcast platforms. It's posted on my page. So there's so many ways you can actually listen to the show. So you pick what works best for you. So someone was listening to episode 1. Again, thank you. Appreciate the support. And hopefully, I did get feedback from people, and some people actually reach out to me when I said, if you're struggling with some mental health issues and you want someone to talk to or need some direction, please feel free to reach out and ask me for my assistance. And it did happen, and people also shared. So what I do, and my ambition to be better at who I am in those personal, private, professional, and pervasive realms, other people decided, you know what? This is like free therapy. But the thing about this is, though this to me will be intimate, it won't be overwhelming. I like to think that I'm easy to talk to. At least I've been told that. So if you're back or you're new, I hope you'll have that same thought too. And you'll be like, you know what? Maya said something that, really made me think about that. That was an aha moment. And we pause within the podcast to let you have that aha moment. And that might be something you might choose to write down, or maybe it's just me having an aha moment and I'm sharing it with you. So episode 2, someone reached out to me after episode 1 and said, hey, Maya, I've got a question, and you may or may not have an answer, but I'd be curious to have your insight. Can you really ever prepare for situations like the coronavirus, COVID-19? And I felt this was a great question because it placed the conversation in episode 1 into play. Everything about episode 1 all just kind of stepped up. Your relationship realms. So how have you been impacted for this, personally, private, professional, and pervasive? And then more importantly, where are you at in that emotional state, your mental state, your physical state, financially? These states are constantly in flux. And here's the thing, though they may be independent, they are interdependent in how they influence you within your relationship realms. So I was like, great question. Because I look for people to give me direction of where you want this journey that we're going, this blueprint we're looking at, because you are the architect of your ambition, where this is going. So, of course, I answered, every realm was impacted by most people because the circumstance the virus set into motion. It's a pandemic, which means it created a crisis in every way. So how I answered that is I said, well, I'm going to give you the answer that you're probably going to hate, but I'm going to be thorough in why I give the answer that I give. Can you really ever prepare for situations like COVID-19? Yes and no. See, you should have known. The duality of the answer is right there. There's a thread in the conversation, and there's some key things I want you to note as we talk about this. It's the same initial situation for everybody. There is no distinguishing factors in regards to COVID-19 because it impacted, it's like, boom, here is like, if I had a balloon that rose into the air and it was full of flour and it hits a certain part of the atmosphere and the pressure bursts the balloon and all the flour falls down. Depending where you are, depending on the winds, some areas may make it harder, some may get less, it may plop right on you. So it's a random thing, which makes it the situation, it's a health crisis that has a local effect on people, it has a national effect and a global impact. So know that. It's very unique within itself. So there are ways you can prepare for it because of the nature of what it is. It's very personal, but it's less personal than you think. It's personal because how you were impacted by it. And there's varying degrees of how personal that it is, because there are some people who have absolutely not been affected by COVID-19 at all. They see what's happening around them and they have empathy. Remember, the ability to see someone else's issues, problems, and to be able not to sympathize, like, oh my God, woe is you. No, 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 no. Sympathizing with people is okay, but it's more important to have empathy, to understand the struggle that they're in, hence connect to, what can I perhaps do to help you? Because I understand this is a difficult situation for everyone, some more than others. And it's being able to connect with them, to walk what they would say maybe a mile in their shoes because you get the struggle that's happening. That's empathy versus, oh, I feel so sorry for you. People often don't want sympathy. They just want you to be able to understand where they're coming from. That's a key thing. So, same initial situation. It's a health crisis that has local, national, and global impact. But the way each person, as I said, experienced it in regards to the influencing factors, that emotional, mental, physical, and financial, those different states, created individual narratives for each of us and how we experience it in those relationship realms. So for instance, for me, I'll use me as an example because I'm the person talking. And then for you, what I'd like to jot down and have you thinking about as we go through this piece is, how did COVID-19 affect you personally? So for instance, I'm single. I have no children. I have a cat. And if everyone knows me, you know how I am about the cats. So to be honest, I was alone a lot to begin with. And I'll be honest, one thing I know about myself is that I have introverted and extroverted traits, which I think is funny. I can be the most social person and fun as all get out, and sometimes too much to my own dismay. And other times I can be very quiet and not withdrawn, but just to myself. And I like personal and quiet time. And it could be because I was an only child that I'm like that. So for me, when I have to spend long periods alone, it doesn't bother me because I have gone seriously months. I've gone beyond a year and not actually been in any type of relationship with someone outside of personally. Now, private, I had friends, but in regards to having a significant other, I didn't. So for me, the struggle to be inside didn't bother me. I found other ways to channel my energy. And I kind of was still doing certain things. So for me personally, I can tell you it didn't affect me in a way that maybe has affected other people. So that's one thing for me. Privately, I'll be honest, I actually don't really have a lot of friends. One of the things is I did a little bit of house cleaning, not by decision, but by situational and circumstances that put some things into light with some friendships I had with people that weren't healthy for me, and probably it didn't work for them either. And it just took the courage to be able to say, hey, you know what, we might have been friends, but apparently this just isn't working anymore. And these are long-term relationships, by the way. But the key thing in my mind was, and I'm pretty sure they don't see it this way because we never really had a great conversation about it, I don't dislike you, I don't hate you, in fact, I still love you. In fact, I want you to be successful and to eat. I'm not just interested in having you dine at my table anymore. That's the difference with me. I cut a lot of things off that didn't work for me, especially when things were brought to my attention. But that's another podcast. So for me, I have a couple people that I would say I'm connected to. And what's interesting is I still remained connected to those people. So it wasn't like I was kind of in an island. Now I have parents, so I phone and keep in contact with people and how you doing and things like that. So for me, I felt like where I was at privately, the only difference was me and a friend might actually go out and have a drink occasionally, or we might go out for a walk. We might have bent that a little bit, and we would stick with our physical exercise and actually meet and go walking. But we did good social distancing and we did things that were safe. So I still had a way to maintain some of my private realms. In regards to professional, I happen to be the person because I'm a crisis intervention specialist in an emergency department. I actually never stopped working. In fact, I probably had more, involvement and interactions with people because of what COVID-19 not just did to patients that would come into the ER, so to speak. Because to be honest, for me in mental health, my patient load was very low. I anticipate that will all blow up at some point. Just know that the stress that people are under, they were afraid to come to the emergency department. But once this kind of settles, because I'm kind of seeing a shift in that already, I'm probably going to see more people because a lot of services have been suspended, or they were doing things like telehealth, which is video chatting with therapists, or where you would normally be able to walk in and to maybe seek some services you couldn't. So people are trying to navigate this on their own the best as they can. So I anticipate where my role will come into play more will be a bit after all these orders are opened, or people feel it's safer to come back out again to an emergency department. So I'm still working. And here's again, I still have interaction with people. So I'm still getting some form of, healthy kind of interaction and laughing with people. So for me, I still feel balanced. Financially, I'm still working, so, I'm not suffering. So that part is key. Pervasive. Okay, so there was a drop off, and maybe being able to go out and have drinks at a bar, attend a concert, do more things I would have done, go to the movie or something like that. But I'm okay with that. I understand this is a short term situation that will have long term implications. Don't think I'm playing this down. So I have actually, within all of my relationship realms, I am very balanced. But I would ask you, how has COVID-19 affected you in those senses? Now, when I shift to my influencing factors, like emotionally, I feel good. But here's the thing. I've been working on me for a while. You can't be within the mental health field and not self-care and be honest about your own issues and problems and think you can help others. I mean, that's a good deflection. Like, I'll focus on someone else's issues because I don't want to focus on mine. Nah. It doesn't work like that. You know what? That for you is like pointing a gun and shooting at yourself and making yourself not be successful. Guess what? I'm not trying to be that man down because I refuse to be honest with myself. So, for me, emotionally, mentally, I'm in a good state. For me, where I put a huge focus was physically. Before COVID-19, I really wanted to get in better shape. And actually, a friend of mine, we actually were working out pretty intense before work, in the morning, doing walks. So it could have been easy when COVID-19 happened to all of a sudden shut down and not do anything. That's not what I did. I did just the opposite. I have an Apple Watch that was worth every penny that I have, because what I find is being able to visually have reminders and navigators and support really are helpful for me. So to see, hey, Maya, you just need 5 more minutes of exercise time and you've hit your goal for the day. This is a thing for me that has been fantastic because it keeps me motivated. For the month of April, I almost closed every ring on my Apple Watch because it was a focus that I had. And at the end of the month, I was actually doing fantastic. And in May, my momentum is still here. So for me, I chose to take my focus of having idle time and working out. And I did it by using, like I said, getting out and walking and getting fresh air and sunshine. Best post I saw on Facebook thus far. Make sure that you drink lots of water, get fresh air and sunshine, because right now, pretty much, you're like an indoor houseplant. Real talk. So that's what I was doing. I didn't do real good in the diet part, though. I got sabotaged to a degree because I'm working in a hospital. Thank you for everybody who sent the food, but you truly threw off my square. And that I learned my discipline was poor. So now my next thing for May is better discipline in regards to having a healthier lifestyle. I don't care for the word diet. I think that right there is self-sabotaging for me. Sometimes words and how we phrase things can make you decide not to be very successful. So fitness has been my thing. Financially, I'm in a good spot. But I've also decided to go back and reevaluate. You know something, though? Maybe I need to save more money doing this, doing that. I'll tell you something. I would challenge people that are griping about, I couldn't get my mani and pedi. I feel you. I can't get my hair done. I can't feel you because I've been running around looking like a Fraggle Rock for years with curly hair. So that's not one of my true passions. I may go occasionally really to get my hair done to get it trimmed, but hair is not necessarily my thing. So I look at all the money that I saved, but here's the thing. I started making a change in how I was spending money even before COVID-19 because I had an objective where financially, I wanted to be in a better place at the end of the year because I have a longer term goal of some things I want to achieve in 2 years. So I realized I had to make a shift in what I was doing financially to make sure that when I'm ready to make that move, I'm in the financial right place. So I've been using this time to refocus, to reboot, and you know what? To go ahead and weed out things that I don't need. So that's me. That's where I'm at right now. But where are you at emotionally, mentally, physically, as well as financially? But the biggest question is, are you here because it wasn't good before? So this is where the yes or no comes in. If you were already in disarray before COVID-19, there's no way you can be prepared for it. If you were slightly in disarray, you might be able to navigate your way through this only with the way you think about the situation. Human nature, it's interesting. It can be very aggressive in how we like to think about things. So when I talk about the yes or no piece and how it's about individually where you were, there's 2 types of people that exist. And this is where the yes and no really comes into play. The subconscious goes to work whenever something is presented where it's chaos, challenge, or change. Remember, I told you I love alliteration. So there's another, that's the alliteration for this particular podcast. When chaos, challenge, or change presents itself, depending on the degree of it for the person, because we all have different insights on how we're affected by chaos. I happen to thrive in chaos. It doesn't throw me off my square as it might someone else. But subconsciously, some people will stand up and dig in. That's called the fight response. Other people will run for safety, or they kind of pull within themselves, and that's called the flight response. So I'm going to give you a more clinical definition, which would be fight or flight is the instinctive psychological response to a threatening situation, which readily, one or the other, it forcibly makes you want to run away or make you stand and fight. So hence, it can be hyper-arousal, like, hey, the adrenaline's rushing. I'm not backing down. I can handle this. Or it can be acute stress response to situations, and it's the flight part. So it's different ways how different people respond. So one of the things that you have to figure out, if it can be yes or no for you, can you be prepared for any real form of chaos, challenge, or change, is are you a fight or flight person? By nature, you tend to be one more than the other, but it doesn't mean that you don't have enough good sense to know when you shouldn't be fighting. Let's be honest. We know when it's like, ooh, that's not a good idea. That's really not a good idea. So the thing I need you to write down right now, am I a fight or flight person? And how you can determine how that is, and this can be one of those aha moments, everybody. The bell is rung. It means bring it in. How you can figure out if you are a fight or flight person is pretty much like this. Go back and look at key situations in your life and how did you respond? So, you find out you get fired at work. I'm going to give a basic example. Of course, you're angry, maybe hurt, upset, maybe it blindsided you and you didn't see it coming. You can literally say, okay, this is a bunch of BS, but you know something? I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to wallow in my misery. I know that I didn't deserve that. It wasn't fair, or perhaps it was fair, okay? Because that's the other side of the coin. Can you be accountable and honest with yourself? Because if you're one of those people who can never be accountable and honest, I'll be honest, it's always going to be no for you when it comes to chaos, challenge, and change, because you're not willing to look yourself straight in the eyes and say, real talk, that was on me. Okay. All right, what's next? Or do you have to fall into oblivion? Do you run to everyone you know and tell your story and cry over spilt milk? And then you just look for everyone to corral around you to make you feel better. Okay, that's only good for a moment. If you stay within that moment, then it's like you're not moving forward. Because chaos eventually will kind of move into challenge. Okay, now that I know what's going on here within this chaos, what are the challenges in the chaos for me? So hence, here's how you would take COVID-19. Let's pull it back in to the situation we're in to say, how can I put the thinking cap on to think about how I can figure out if I'm a fight or flight person? Well, you got to ask yourself what I call a series of emotional questions. And they're not really just emotional. They're really more statements and facts of existence is what they are in this current situation. And then once you ask yourself these questions and give yourself the answers, it'll probably tell you if you're fight or flight. So for instance, if you want to know how you can handle and you want to be a yes person, here's some of the questions you should ask and think about how you respond. I am not working at this time because if the answer is COVID-19, because you lost your job because of COVID-19, then you realize this is a circumstance that may be short time, but more importantly, it's out of your control. But if the question, I am not working at this time because I wasn't working before COVID-19, then you already have what would be a compounded stress. So chances of you standing up to fight this, you were already down. The question is, were you down for the count? Another question, I am struggling financially at this time because, is it because you were struggling before COVID-19, or were you in a good financial place and this is a setback? Or were you already struggling, so this is just pretty much where you were already? There are some people who have flat out said, and I know that I've actually seen more in the scope of my job, look, I wasn't working before. I was teetering on poverty. I actually am poverty. So this is not something new for me. There's a lot of people in our respective communities that live in poverty. This is their day-to-day existence, and it may be worse than what some people are right now. So you got to ask yourself, were you financially struggling before COVID? Then COVID's not the reason that you're where you are. You were already in that quagmire before COVID-19. Am I sick at this time because? So were you having health issues and you got COVID-19, so now it was exacerbated? Or were you already in poor health, so now the mental and emotional stress of everything that's going on, because stress creates other physical health issues for you. So are you in a worse place physically because of what happened with COVID-19? Or were you kind of already there? Was there some underlying anxiety and depression before this ever happened for you? Or some health issues that now your worries got worse, or maybe they got worse during this time because access to a lot of the resources that you may need may not exactly be there because a lot of things have been scaled back. I am depressed at this time because, is it because I lost my job, I'm not seeing my family, or to be honest, were you kind of not in a good emotional and mental state even before? I kind of touched on it earlier. I am frustrated at this time because I'm stuck in the house. I can't go anywhere. I'm not working. That's COVID-19. Or were you frustrated before the stay-at-home order came into play? I can't get my hair done at this time because, well, were you getting it done before? And if you're not doing it now, you know why. I can't get my nails done because I can't socialize with my friends and family at this time because those latter three are all pretty much COVID-19, not unless the nails and maybe the hair were a financial issue that you were struggling with or maybe spending too much money on. So the thing is, when you ask these statements of existence and fact, if COVID-19 is pretty much because, but if you can step back before COVID-19 and say you had some existing issues before, then that's where the work begins. And I will tell you something, you'll never be able to say yes, that you can be prepared for chaos, challenge, or change because you weren't preparing yourself to have success or happiness prior to COVID-19. You might have been going through the motions of existence for different reasons. This is what this podcast is about. Maya, my ambition, your ambition, they're not the same. But the question is, how can I help you to begin to see, pull back that veil of low self-esteem, self-sabotage that plagues you to identify what is your ambition? Because remember, ambition are those goals, those dreams, those plans, things that you've decided you want to do for you to put in action. What are the obstacles that are keeping you for that? I want to help you to be able to harness the motivation you need, which is understanding those relationship realms and how you are in your emotional, mental, financial states, how these things interact and how they're either elevating you or keeping you for where you need to be, so that you can find that satisfaction and success you're looking to have in your daily life, because it's the day that builds into the long-term happiness that you seek. So no, the reason to establish those questions, which you could look at them as cause and effect statements, because you're establishing the process, understanding what was happening before this happened, and then you can accept and begin to look at what you control and not control. That's the whole point of this, is part of being healthy, and people struggle with this in therapy all the time. We are so fixated on trying to have a bigger focus on what I can't control than what I can control. And that's for different reasons, because it gets back to that big dirty word called accountability. Accountability. So another thing that's going to either help you be able to understand if you're a fight or flight person, but also can you say, yes, I can prepare for adversity, is understanding where are you at with your level of accountability. Okay, the skies are about to open up and information's about to rain down on you right now about where you literally stand in regards to accountability with your life. You are the architect of your dreams. You put the blueprint down. Then you begin to get the resources to build that dream up. Some resources may be more expensive than others. Some may seem like they're unattainable. So maybe you have to change that one material that you want to be part of it to get to where you need to be. And that's what most people don't understand. It's like, well, I don't want to. It's not about want. That's another thing too. It's about needs versus want and understanding how to give value to each one of those. The needs are what has to happen. The wants are maybe when the needs are met, that supplemental piece falls into play. Part of being able to weather the storm, so to speak, of chaos, challenge, and change is often thinking analytically and methodically in how you're going to navigate your way through those things, opposed to emotionally. Now, here comes back, we're going to step right back into that personal realm when we talk about this, because most people act on emotion. It's act first, think after, and that's where regret comes in, okay? Oh, if I had thought about that, I wouldn't have done that. Well, that's probably true, but most people don't do it. Training yourself to do as my grandmother would say, may she rest in peace. Think twice, speak once. Because once you put something into the universe, chances are you cannot call it back. You can apologize for it, but it still has put a ripple into play and it still has an effect. But if you think through something, and here's the thing, have a person you can bounce something off of. This is why your therapist can be a great thing. Because you can walk into a person who's all team you, being honest with you, because trying to have your therapist not be honest with you to only say what you want to hear is not part of your growth point. It's self-sabotaging yourself. And a good therapist will be like, I don't think I'm helping you because you just want me to say what you want to hear, and this is not why we're here. But finding that person you feel you can bounce off what's going on with you is really key to be able to figure out how you're navigating. That's the question right now. Do you have that person in your life that you really feel like, that's my rock? I can tell them something. I feel like they're not going to judge me. They're going to hear me out. They're going to be honest. But more importantly, can you receive the honesty when you get it? See, there's layers to all of this. This is just podcast 2 in Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition, asking the hard questions. Hopefully you've been jotting these things down. It gets back to the question again. Can you do it? Yes or no? Can you be prepared for chaos, challenge, and change? If you are being assertive about understanding your roles and interactions in your relationship realms, this is real talk, it would help you to establish or at least acknowledge where you are in those influencing factors, that emotion, mental, physical, all those things. You might be connected enough to respond to a crisis, like a current crisis, with more fight than flight. It just depends where you are. But you won't know that unless you really ask yourself the hard question. Because remember, choosing to fight means you have to be willing to do heavy lifting. And if you're not a person that's used to emotional heavy lifting, then chances are you're in flight mode because you feel trapped, uncertain, stressed, and perhaps you can't handle not having control over what you're feeling in the situation. Always assessing threats, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats are always there. And the key thing is saying, what can I control right now on COVID-19 versus what can I control? Okay, I'm not going to fixate and overthink the I can't control pieces. I'm going to focus on the pieces that I can control. And this is where you can start to begin to shift and being in a better place. So how can you navigate chaos, challenge, and change? I have 3 tools I want to give to you. And it's back to part 2 of Maya's alliteration in the podcast. Accountability, accessibility, and adaptation. Accountability, knowing where you are and when you are. Someone's like, what? I can be aware and when at the same time? You sure can. Knowing where you are emotionally, mentally, physically, and financially, okay? And when you are. The when is, okay, I was here before this happened, and then now I'm here. That's what that really means. Preparedness. So you might start asking yourself questions, and people are like, I can't think about that like right now. I'm like, yes, you can. Thinking under duress sometimes is when your best thinking could happen. But you know what? If you were a person who didn't have life insurance, emergency fund, a 401k, or that nice little, safety net, 3 to 6 months you're supposed to have put away of your income. Because if it's not COVID-19, guess what, people? It could be your job could close down and you could lose it permanently. It could be your health could fail and then you don't have insurance. There's all kinds of reasons for you to be prepared beyond just COVID-19. COVID-19 is just bigger than life. It's like nothing we've seen in our lifetime. So accountability is huge. Accessibility. Can you make yourself accessible to new opportunities that may be out of your comfort zone? I knew a person that pretty much was a very entrepreneurial person in spirit, and she was making t-shirts and doing really well at it. And all of a sudden, boom, COVID-19 happens, and that got shut down. She did like many people did. She started making masks, and of course, she was blinging them out. Guess what? She's found a way to stay above water, but now she's like, you know something? I needed to think about ways that I had all these different resources and tools with the t-shirts. I should have been making things where I could ship out things and do this and do that. She's rethinking things. But what she didn't do was stop and become complacent because what she was doing before, all of a sudden she couldn't do anymore. So have you made yourself accessible to other opportunities that may have arisen? A lot of people like, well, that was my job and I don't want to do anything else. I'll real talk. Okay, I don't curse very much, but I'll curse this one time here. If I was in a position when I had to shovel shit to survive, I'm going to shovel shit to survive. But in the meantime, I'm like, when's the last time I got to lift this shovel? I'm working out a plan to stop having to do that. But if it's a survival thing I have to do, then I'm doing it. Maya cursed. Shame on Maya. Bad Maya. Okay. The last thing, adaptation. You have to be able to adjust to challenges and changes without overthinking it. Change is not always permanent, and it can happen frequently. That's the thing. So I'm a very flexible person. When things change, I go, okay, let me see. Now, what am I supposed to be doing here? I don't get upset about it. Because things are often in constant movement in our lives consistently. And I see people struggle with change all the time. something changes at work, and the first thing they do is complain about it before they know if it's actually really going to work, because it's not within their comfort zone. The reason most people struggle and they can never say yes to being able to adjust to something like COVID-19 is literally because of the fact that people like comfort and consistency and convenience. Alliteration number 3. And when you pull those things away and you make people act outside of that, they really struggle with it. I'm the kind of person that I'm okay. I'm going to make the adaptations that I need to be able to survive. And I'm always like, and I plan on coming out this bigger and better than ever. That's my mindset. That I rise to a challenge just like I thrive in chaos. And I've always been pretty flexible with change. So for me, I am a person that will always be able to navigate a situation. Mind you, maybe it's like my health, but even in health situations I've had, I'm always looking for a way to do something different and better. So I put a lot on the table in this episode. So let's revisit the question. Can you really ever be prepared for situations like COVID-19? The answer has not changed. Yes and no. Because it 100% depends on you, not me. If you want to be that person, you can. But it means doing those things, those 3 tools, start working on accountability, accessibility, and adaptation. Maybe listen to this podcast more than once and see if you get a takeaway, something different than the first time you heard me talk about it. These things will never, ever just be convenient or consistent or comfortable. But that's not what life is really about. And I like to believe that if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't just change you. This can transform you into something that you never thought would happen, because diamonds are made under pressure. And look at the beauty and the value they have to people. All right, everybody, you're the diamond in the rough. Get ready to be marvelous and beautiful. With that being said, that's it. I like to keep the project class under 40 minutes. I like for 30, went a little over today, but it's okay. I think it was a good salient conversation. Make sure you check out episode 1 if you didn't. Share this episode if you thought it was worthy of being listened to, everybody. And make sure you listen to it on the Apple or Google Play podcast, whichever platform works for you. Until next time, everybody, remember, you're like a house plant. Sunlight, water, and air. Ciao, everyone.